You are at Rants Incorporated, where I rant about whatever my $10 a month plus patrons want me to rant about. You can get one of these by being one of those. This one is for Matt, who wanted me across 2 months to rant about the first and second halves of the album Triarchy of the Lost Lovers by Rotting Christ. And I listened to this album. I thought it was pretty good, pretty interesting, and I had to do some research on it to really like place it historically, because this is apparently a 1997 Greek black metal record from a band that it's the third record of Rotting Christ, who were apparently instrumental in defining the sound of the region's black metal, which I know little about. Like, most of the black metal history I hear about is the standard, stuff about Swedish black metal and or not Swedish, Norwegian black metal rather, and its war with Swedish death metal. Is more the stuff that is the talk of legends. But I've never dived into like Greek black metal before, and it was interesting, especially to me, because the sound of this album, the like guitar tones and just general sound, really reminded me of Opeth's first album, Orchid, which actually came out like a year before this. And this is their third album. All of them sound very different from one another from what little I listened to, like in terms of mixing and production. So I'm just wondering if that was like the sound of the time. I know that Opeth on Morning Rise used a lot of dueling guitars, and then said that like because of the fact that everybody was doing that, the sound became really trite to Michael Achterfeld, so that was why he stopped doing it after that album. I just wonder if this was like the guitar tone that was like the style. But while this album does like in retrospect sound kind of, I wouldn't even call it like generic, but I've heard a lot of black metal that sounds like this, be it influenced by it or not. But there was a decent amount of variety across this album. These songs are not super long. They're definitely more riff-driven and less atmosphere-driven than a lot of black metal is. There were supposedly influences of doom and gothic rock on this album, according to like Wikipedia. I didn't really key into gothic rock. I would assume that that's something that comes up more later on their discography, but I could definitely see some doomy vibes. Again, it reminded me of like both early Opeth and a little bit early Agalach, in where it did use its atmospheric elements. Just, again, 90s, like late 90s atmospheric, more experimental kind of black metal sound, stuff that's more technical and riff-driven than the more atmospheric or just like fucking ultra lo-fi shit of the early 90s. So, yeah, man, I thought it was a pretty good album. Maybe I'd listen to it again. I also, like, checked out the latest Rotting Christ album, which just sounded like incredibly generic, brutal metal that is way overproduced, and I was not surprised. Seems to have happened to a lot of older bands that try to adapt to the new era, but the sound on this album was very solid, so it's worth a listen if you like black metal.